All right. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are the Macmillan Children's Publishing Group School and Library team. My name is Elise Villalobos. I am the Associate Marketing Manager of our team, and I'm going to pass it off to the rest of the team for introductions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Luby, Senior Marketing Manager for the School and Library team. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Tyler, and I am the School and Library Marketing Assistant, and it's very nice for you guys to be here today.
We are so excited to give you an overview of our winter 2023 list of titles, including picture books, chapter books, middle grade, and young adult titles from all of our imprints here at MCPG. Our imprints include Feiwel and Friends, Farrar Straus Giroux Books for Young Readers, Henry Holt Books for Young Readers, First Second, Roaring Brook Press, Neon Squid, and Odd Dot. As you may have heard, we are also very excited to have two special guests live with us later in the event. Nick Brooks, author of Promise Boys, and acclaimed author and book club host Amerie, who will give us a preview of her new book, You Will Do Great Things, illustrated by CSK illustrator honoree Raissa Figueroa. We'll also hear from some other special author guests throughout the preview presentation. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. In the chat, you'll see a link for a full list of titles we're discussing today. This link was included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download it, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click the link located there. You can also download the title list by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble accessing these materials, please contact the Booklist team at the email address we're dropping in the chat. In the digital review copy column for picture books and graphic novels, you can click through to read a digital review copy on issue. Please do not share these links as they are to be used for review purposes only. In the digital review copy column for middle grade and young adult titles, you'll find a link to request the book on NetGalley. As we only have 75 minutes to present, this is not our full list of titles. Please subscribe to our MacKids School and Library e-newsletter and follow us on MacKids School SL to keep up to speed with all of our new and upcoming releases. If you are live tweeting today, please use hashtag MacKidsPreview.
And now for some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode today, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions during the event. Booklist also offers closed captioning on all webinars to enable or disable captions on your screen. Please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. Today's event will be recorded and the recording will be shared with you after the event. Finally, we have our chat open today and we'd love to hear what you think about our books. To that note, here is our code of conduct policy. At Macmillan, we expect all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may at the discretion of the organizers be immediately removed. And now I am thrilled to introduce our first special guests of the day, Brian Geffen and Nick Brooks. Brian Geffen is a senior editor at Henry Holt Books for Young Readers, an imprint of the Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. He has worked with wonderful creators such as Danielle Clayton, Ren Bram, Jeanette Arroyo, Dr. Crystal Fleming, Julian Randall, Julie C. Dow, John Flanagan, Remy Lai, Katie Rose Poole, Rocky Kalin, Christian McKay Heidecker. Every time I introduce Brian, this list gets longer and longer because he has a fantastic list of books. Brian inquires a wide variety of young adult and middle grade fiction, particularly fantasy, realistic contemporary, and action adventure, as well as graphic novels and humorous picture books. Born and raised in Queens, New York, Brian is a fan of traveling, eating, late 90s hip hop, and learning foreign languages. Author Nick Brooks is an author and award-winning filmmaker from Washington, D.C. He is a 2020 graduate of USC's TV and film production program. His short film, Hoop Dreaming, earned him the George Lucas Scholar Award, and he was a finalist in the Forbes 30 Under 30 Film Fest. He is currently in development for his first feature film, We Were Born Kings, with Mandalay Pictures. Before becoming a filmmaker, Nick was an educator working with at-risk youth, and many of his stories are colored by his experiences with the children and families of his community. He is the author of the middle grade novel, Nothing Interesting Ever Happens to Ethan Fairmont, and his YA debut, Promise Boys. Welcome, Brian and Nick.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for having us, Kristen. Hey, Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Excited to talk about this book that we have coming out soon.
I am as well. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all for having us, and thank you for being here and allowing me to come back. I love being in this forum and talking with great authors like Nick, especially to talk about a book like Promise Boys, which I'm going to say it right here. I think this is the YA of 2023. So put it on notice. Don't take my word alone. Karen McManus has read and loved it. She called it thrilling, captivating, and blade sharp. And Adam Silvera also said he was at the edge of his seat, calling it a brilliant pull-no punches mystery with a bruised heart at its core. So I want to get right to that core, Nick. And I want to ask you, because Promise Boys is such a powerful and special read. You've heard me just drone on and on about how much I love it. But I know you spent a lot of time working with charter schools in DC. And, I was wondering why it was so important for you to center the lives of the young people who go to these types of schools in Promise Boys.
Absolutely. Well, it was first and foremost important just because these stories aren't told often. We don't get to hear the stories of these kids often. And as you know, I started my work in education piloting a program where I actually visited some of the toughest schools in DC. And I was working with these exact, group of kids who had, trouble acclimating to the traditional classroom setting. And I got to bond with these young men and understand them and see them in ways that a lot of my peers didn't, and as I heard their stories, just simply because I was willing to hear it, I started to understand them and I started to see myself in them. And so getting back to your question, it's important for me to tell their stories because again, it's just not one that's told often. And I hope that in creating something like Promise Boys, we can start to get people to listen and we can see behind those tough exteriors or the joking nature that these kids deal with very real things that honestly would cripple most adults, and so our Black and brown boys in low-income communities just need more grace, they need more help, and they need more attention. So ultimately, this story will hopefully kind of help to foster all of that.
Absolutely. And I think you've created such a beautiful sort of backdrop to do it with the mystery, but also really sort of honing in, like you're saying, on these three characters. And you kind of just got into this a little bit, but I'd love to dive in a little deeper about what was important to you in sort of depicting these three young men of color. And you talked about how you've worked with characters like this and bringing them a life on the page, but what was important to you in terms of how you sort of depicted these three main protagonists?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, for me, it was important to depict like the vulnerable loving sides of these kids. I mean, already coming into the story, they're all suspected of murder. so we get that. Everybody from the outside looking in has a preconceived notion about who these boys are. And that's something that's very real. That's something that I saw as my experience as an educator is that once a student is labeled, that label sticks. They got this thing called tracking where they track students from elementary all up through high school. And it happened to me. And you start to track students, they get a reputation, and then they're put in particular classrooms throughout their matriculation. And the resources that they're given is directly associated with the label that this kid has, right? And so I guess for me to break down all of that, I wanted to depict kids who were coming from this type of environment, but had these vulnerable, loving, emotional, ambitious sides. I think that was the most important because again, as people start to read this book and understand, who these kids are, and even educators as they go into classrooms and maybe work with populations of students that come from, again, call them at risk or low income communities, that they have promise in the back of their mind, and they these are just kids, and they go through all the same thing that all of us went through as kids. And so for me, it was important to kind of put that on Front Street as we went about it. And JB, Trey, Ramon, these are all kids, amalgamations of kids that I work with. You know what I mean? If not myself, JB, is I think the most similar to me as a kid, the strong silent type. And then you got Trey, who seems to be a jokester, but you don't realize it's because he's laughing to keep from crying. And and you have Ramon, who seems to always be distracted, but we don't understand that it's to help support his family. You know what I mean? So all of these different things of real experiences that I've had with kids that I've had to check my own thinking on at times. And I think that's why it's important to put this in the book to help other people see what I saw.
And I think you just, the way that you've structured the story with these multiple POVs, giving us insight into all three of these characters, and then beyond, and sort of seeing the perception of these characters through the lens of outside perspectives, just enriches and deepens these characters so much. But it gives us that sort of inner sense of vulnerability, like you're saying, where these things that we don't get to see on the exterior, or they're labeled for, like you're saying. But what something you were just talking about that really interested me is you're talking about sort of the way that they kind of get labeled in these systems. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit, if you don't mind, and talk about the setting, because I think the setting and the system, and the system are inevitably sort of interlinked, right? So, basically I'm wondering, in the book, there's this charter school where the murder and the story takes place, predominantly urban promise prep. And there's this perception that it is a safe place and a sanctuary, but the more the story goes on, the more our three protagonists and their family members start to realize that it's just as dangerous as sort of the outside world, if not more so. So how and why do you challenge the rose-colored lens through which people tend to examine sort of prep and charter schools?
Yeah, well, again, it comes a lot from my experience, and I think when we have institutions that are responsible for educating our young ones, it's important to challenge them and hold them accountable and make sure we're doing the work to keep them on their square. And so it's a little bit of that, but it's also, again, a lot of what I saw. Charter schools have an interesting way of operating. They move into, at least in how it worked in DC, they would move into a traditionally public school that served the community, right? You have your neighborhood school. They would move in, take over that school. And then if you couldn't cut it, if you couldn't meet the requirements that charter school would then impose on the community, they send you to a different school across town. So if you're not getting the grades, if you're not walking properly, if you're not speaking properly, they kick you out, so that they can maintain this rose-colored lens. And I think that's dangerous, you know what I mean? And I've seen it where you have kids who were going to a neighborhood school, it becomes a charter school, they're put out, they have to go to a school across town, and maybe a neighborhood where they're not the friendliest with the guys in that neighborhood, you know what I mean? And so it creates a interesting dynamic, but it's almost like a filter system. And I think that's why, from what I saw, that's why I wanted to challenge it. And again, just get people to start to think about these things. It's all about starting a conversation, and let's look at charter schools and see what's actually happening, because a lot of times they operate as this filter system. And you talk about like No Child Left Behind. Well, that's one of the things that the charter school directly does, is leave kids behind, because they say, hey, you don't cut it in what we have going on here, and we have the autonomy to put you out. And so they take advantage of that. And so I think, again, for me, and it's not as, I got to make sure that I say in all of this that this is not to condemn all charter schools or all schools or all teachers or all administrators or all educators. It's not to do that, because I know some very hardworking educators, this is more so about the system, which I think is what you brought up initially. This is about the system of the education system, particularly how it functions in low income communities. I think that's what we don't want to get misconstrued, because I think those are just underserved places, and it's not a conversation that's being had. So
I agree. And I mean, I think you hit so hard on the sort of systemic problem here. And yes, urban promise prep is this example to sort of speak to that. But, I think you're making it very much a sort of statement about systemic issues here, which is really great. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, for all of these really, really important conversations about this, school to prison pipeline and systemic issues, this is very much, the vehicle through which you tell the story is a mystery and a murder mystery. So one of the things that I sort of want to talk about, because we have these three characters who, for various reasons, which you read the book, you'll realize are all kind of suspected as being potential murderers here. There begins this thought process of, what could I have done differently to not find myself in this position, right? And there's this one really heart-wrenching moment for me when we have one of our characters, Ramon, who's quoted as saying, "I wish I could go back, turn back time, but to where? In order to avoid the incident with Principal Moore that landed me in detention, I would have never had to have made the pupusas. And if I never made them, it would be because Caesar wasn't arrested. In order for Caesar to never be arrested, I would have been his little cousin, and on and on. How do I unwind my whole life?" I think this applies to all three main characters who are judged and put in situations simply for being. So I'd love for you to speak a bit to this quote and the microscope Boys of Colors are particularly held under, and what you want readers to take away from these three leads.
Yeah. I think I love this question, and I love the phrase, the microscope that they're put under, because I think that's a great way to put it. I think that these three boys is no secret that they come from low economic status. And I think that there's a social order, whether intentional or unintentional, that the powers would be that they have this order in place for a reason. And so I think what Ramon is really saying there is that no matter which way he turns, that order exists. there's not a path really that he can see that will take him that will remove that label that he's received, right? He's been born into this. And so just like all the other boys, this is exactly it. The only way to undo everything that they've been through is to have not been born in the circumstance that they were born in, which is you're right, it's really heart-wrenching because it's not the most hopeful statement. You know what I mean? And of course, at the end of the book, we finally get there. But I think that's what he's feeling at the moment. He's like, man, no matter which way I turn, this is my predicament. And so hopefully as people read the book, as we've been kind of saying, a through line, I think, is for people to understand that that these young men and these type of communities and these type of schools, I think, need more attention. They need more advocates. And we need to start this conversation around how are we, educating our young men of color? How are we creating school to prison pipelines in low-income communities? And what can we do about it?
And I just feel the need to add that, to your point, this is very much a story of hope, ultimately, as much as it may not sound like it from, some of the questions I've asked, but this definitely was a story where you're left feeling like hope. It's not a story about pain. It's a story about hope. And that's what ultimately made me fall for it. So I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to make sure I could tell the group that before. And Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It was just a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here today, Brian and Nick. We're really excited about Promise Boys, and this is such an illuminating look at the education system. So we're so glad you were here to have this conversation with us.
Thank you.
Now we are going to buzz about more of our winter 2023 YA titles. All right, first up, I want you to get excited because we have another incredible novel in verse by National Book Award finalist Amber McBride. This book is about depression, friendship, fairy tales, and how we are never as alone as we think. Whimsy is a teen in the hospital for treatment of clinical depression when she meets a boy named Fairy. She recognizes that they both have magic in the marrow of their bones, and when Fairy and his family move to the same street, the two start to realize that their lifelines may have twined and untwined many times before. They are both terrified of the forest at the end of the road in their town. The forest whispers to Whimsy, the forest might hold the answers to the parts of them they feel are missing. It holds monsters, fairy tales, and pain that they have both been running from. And soon they realize that the only way out is through. I realize this sounds dark, and it is, but it's also beautiful, as the author lets in shards of light so these two teens can heal. The journey is based on Amber's own experiences with clinical depression, and she writes honestly about this in an extensive author's note that includes trigger warnings and resources for help. And next, we have Saints of the Household. This is truly something special and unique. R.A. Tyson's debut novel draws on her Bribri American heritage. Bribris are indigenous Costa Ricans, and the story explores toxic masculinity, coming of age in small town Minnesota, and the power of art through an indigenous lens. In Saints of the Household, Max and Jay have always depended on one another for their survival. Growing up with a physically abusive father, the two Bribri American brothers have learned that the only way to protect themselves and their mother is to stick to a schedule and keep their heads down. But when they hear a classmate in trouble in the woods, instinct takes over and they intervene, breaking up a fight and seriously injuring their high school star soccer player. As the true details of the fateful afternoon unfold, Max and Jay grapple with the weight of their actions, their shifting relationship as brothers, and their dreams for the future slipping away. They'll have to reach back to their Bribri roots to find their way forward. Told in alternating points of view, using vignettes and poems, R.A. crafts an emotional, slow-burning drama about brotherhood, redemption, and doing the right thing. This book is a gorgeous read. It's the first book by an indigenous Costa Rican for teens. It opens your eyes and asks big questions, and it's insanely intimate. Next up is The -1 Club by Kekla Magoon. A few days after Kermit Sanders' college-age sister dies in a tragic car accident, he finds a note in his locker inviting him to join the -1 Club, a group of 5 other kids in his high school who have lost a parent or sibling too early and who have banded together to provide each other a quirky form of moral support. The group has 2 rules. They're always there for each other and they never talk about it. One member of the group is Kermit's secret crush, Matt, the only out gay guy in their conservative community's high school. Matt takes Kermit under his wing, and Kermit's long-held fantasies begin to take hold. When things at home are rough, Matt invites him on adventures. Matt's happy-go-lucky style of pretending everything is fine is a welcome comfort to Kermit, who dreams about his sister every night and doesn't want to think about her during the day. The dominant themes are grief and queer teen romance, and the narrative also deals with depression and suicidal ideation. This is an exploration of how we get through the messy moments of life and how to keep going when pain feels like an active choice. We are thrilled to have new YA fiction from highly acclaimed author Kekla Magoon, so we're hoping you're as excited as we are. And The Headmaster's List by Melissa De La Cruz. So Melissa De La Cruz has turned her expert eye to the YA thriller space for the very first time with The Headmaster's List, a riveting mystery that's One of Us is Lying meets Riverdale. Centered on a fatal car crash and the chilling mystery of just who was at fault, the story really spins out when a local true crime podcast takes an interest in the case. Is it a coincidence that all but the victim, Chris, is on Armstrong Prep's esteemed honor roll, The Headmaster's List? Melissa harnesses the glitz and glamour of the story's prestigious prep school setting to take aim at the hypocrisy and privilege inherent in these communities, weaving an edge-of-your-seat thriller that echoes bookshelf favorites like A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Ace of Spades. This is a deliciously devious new direction for Melissa that will no doubt attract fans of her best-selling The Queen's Assassin and Alex and Eliza series, while drawing in readers who love books like Sadie and stands of hit shows like Gossip Girl. Okay, in our sixth book of our homegrown remix classic series, readers are lured to the foggy streets of Victoria, London in My Dear Henry, a Jekyll and Hyde remix by Kaylin Barron. This is one of the most well-known Gothic thrillers of all time, and it's been reimagined from the perspective of two queer Black boys. Follow Gabriel Utterson, a 17-year-old law clerk who has returned to London for the first time since his life, and that of his dearest friend, Henry Jekyll, was derailed by a scandal that led to his and Henry's expulsion from the London Medical School. Gabriel grows jealous of Henry's new friend Hyde, but the real mystery lies within the London fog. Kaylin Barron is the best-selling author of Cinderella is Dead and This Poison Heart. Her books have garnered multiple star reviews, tons of media coverage, and several award nominations, and we are thrilled to see her shine doing what she loves, writing Gothic tales. Her deliciously creepy take on Jekyll and Hyde is perfect for fans of other twisted historicals like Within These Wicked Walls and Wednesday Books' Anatomy, a Love Story. Readers will be left asking themselves, who are the real monsters, the ones who twist themselves to fit into the system, or the ones who built the system in the first place? Next up, we have In Limbo by Deb JJ Lee, but I'll let her present this book to you.
Hi there, my name is Deb JJ Lee, and I created Limbo, a graphic memoir coming out with For a Second. This book holds very true and dear to my heart, not just because I've put everything I've got into, like every page, every panel, every speech bubble, really trying to make the best drawings I can after each one. And what a journey that was. Been working on this book since I graduated college, and it's basically the world's longest thesis project, longest therapy session, but a lot of it is a love letter to myself as a high schooler going through these events as I can best remember them. It's a lot about forgiving people who have hurt us, about how to ask for forgiveness from those that we have unfortunately hurt. The intersection of mental illness and Korean diaspora, of, balancing your world and finding peace with your identity is a pretty specific one, but I think a lot of lessons about navigating the oftentimes tumultuous years of high school, of cliques, of finding your people is quite universal. So I thank you in considering In Limbo for your collection, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb. I saw you in the chat earlier, so we're so excited that you were able to buzz a little bit about your book. We have some spreads here. It is absolutely gorgeous. Agreed, Mary. And next we have Alondra by Gina Famia. Alondra is a contemporary YA novel that the author and editor developed from her play of the same name Alondra is a lonely teenage girl in the Coney Island projects with her foster mother, who took her in after Alondra's single mother died. Shy and self-contained, she has a secret passion for professional wrestling, and over the summer befriends a group of teens who are equally obsessed with the sport. As Alondra navigates friendships, romance, and issues at home, she slowly comes out of her shell, even embarking on a tentative romance with a girl from her wrestling group as she comes to grips with her emerging bisexuality. The author's prose is vibrant and engaging, bringing a specificity of detail to the text that makes Alondra's world and friends feel vividly alive. More than just an ode to wrestling, this is a life-affirming, compassionate story that shows us the beautiful complexity of human relationships. And it's about how a shared interest can really bring people out of themselves and into a supportive community. Next is Hungry Ghost by Victoria Ying. With this graphic novel, the author, Ying, not only brings her varied publishing and animation experience with film credits in Frozen and Moana and more, but also a story grounded in her own personal struggles. Hungry Ghost follows Valerie Chu, a 16-year-old girl who is quiet, studious, and above all thin. No one, not even her best friend Jordan, suspects that she has been binging and purging for years. But Val's life and priorities are upended when her father dies abruptly. As she tries to comfort her mother and her little brother, Val abandons her ED patterns and begins to reevaluate her life, her choices, and her own body. This beautiful and heart-wrenching young adult graphic novel takes a look at eating disorders, family dynamics, and ultimately a journey to self-love. The Japanese-style art is moody, fluid, and full of character. The minimal color palette adds to the heavy themes while maintaining a hopeful tone. And we really see Hungry Ghost following up neatly after books like Himawari House and Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me from our own list, as well as Speak, the graphic novel. All right, please visit our NetGalley page to request even more YA books. But for now, I'll pass the baton off to Kristen to start us off in middle grade. Thank you for listening to YA.
Yes, moving on to our must-read middle grade books. First up, My Selma. This stunning memoir of an Alabama's girls coming of age shines illuminating light on everyday aspects of the Selma of the civil rights era. Through personal stories and deeply moving recollections of the author's life, mainly as a 12-year-old growing up in 1965 in Selma, Willie Mae Brown gives us an up-close view of growing up Black at the epicenter of a tumultuous turning point in history, in the city that became known the world over, but to the author as a child was the whole world itself. As the civil rights movement and the fight for voters' rights unfolded in Selma, many things happened inside and outside of the Browns family that did not have anything to do directly with the sit-ins or the famed marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. In many ways, the people of Selma, as represented by the Brown family, had to carry on with their day-to-day lives during those years. Yet the bridge was always in the background of the misery that had been inflicted on Selma's citizens. It stood as a reminder of what and who governed Selma, Alabama. Here, in numerous Boise slice of life vignettes, is the story of growing up in an incredibly complicated, dangerous time. We see Willie Mae's father being forced by white police officers to use his beloved hunting dogs in a search for a Black fugitive. We hear about Willie Mae getting bullied and coming to blows with her second cousin next door. We see the frightening repercussion of Willie Mae deciding to earn extra pocket money by doing some summer babysitting for a white woman across town. We witness Willie Mae getting dragged away from a school basketball game with her friends to a church rally with her mother, where she will have the transformative experience of hearing an illegal speech by Martin Luther King Jr. And she speaks about this so eloquently. It was a life-changing experience. The result is a gripping kaleidoscopic portrait of a young person's everyday life in a world-changing time and place. Next, The Librarian of Auschwitz received 6-star reviews, a Sidney Taylor Book Award, and it became an international bestseller soon after it was published in 2017. School Library Journal called it a text that once read will never be forgotten, and Booklist called it emotionally searing reading experience. We're grateful to have the opportunity to introduce this book to an entirely new audience thanks to this graphic novel adaptation. The Librarian of Auschwitz is based on the real-life story of 14-year-old Dita Kraus, who was imprisoned in Auschwitz and risked her life to preserve the small clandestine library of 7 books in the notorious children's camp. Dita's story is one of courage and hope amidst one of the darkest periods in history, and it is one that has struck a chord with teens and adults alike. Salva Rubio and Loretta Araka have done an amazing job adapting this original novel. Both the art and text are incredibly moving and accessible. Next, Katherine Marsh, the author of Nowhere Boy, which received 4-star reviews upon publication in 2018, turns her lens to the Holodomor, a little-known crisis that took place in Soviet Ukraine in the early 1930s. We have Katherine here as a special guest to introduce this incredibly timely and transporting tale of family strength and hope herself. So here's more from Katherine.
Almost 3 years ago, before Russia invaded Ukraine, I sat down to write a story inspired by my family heritage. I grew up with my grandma, Natasha, who is Ukrainian. She left in 1928 by herself, leaving behind most of her family, and just 4 years later, Stalin orchestrated a famine, known in Ukrainian as the Holodomor, that killed over 4 million Ukrainians. I wanted to tell the story of a Ukrainian family like my grandmother's that was caught up in this tragedy. My story, however, starts at a different time. It's the beginning of the pandemic, and 13-year-old Matthew is stuck at home in New Jersey, anxious and bored. His mother moves in his great-grandmother Gigi, and Matthew discovers she's been keeping a painful, lifelong secret. Just like my Edgar Award-winning book, The Night Tourist, The Lost Year is a mystery. Matthew must piece together, bit by bit, Gigi's story when she was his age, as well as that of her 2 cousins. It's a tale that takes you to Soviet Ukraine and to Brooklyn in 1933. So why is this book so perfect for the school and library community? Well, first of all, it introduces kids to Ukrainian history and helps them connect the past with present and current events in Ukraine. Secondly, it also is a lesson in media literacy. I picked this powerful period of disinformation to help teach kids about our own era of disinformation. Thirdly, it's also a writing lesson. As someone who has been to many classrooms, I snuck in a whole bunch of tips about writing, journalism, and the importance of oral history. And finally, it's also a book that grapples with the pandemic and those anxieties. And in doing so, it helps kids move from loss and grief to resilience and shows the power of stories to help make that happen.
Wow, thanks so much to Katherine for that video. And now over to Elise to share a few more middle grade books.
Hello. First in up for me is Bomb, the graphic novel. So this is an adaptation of one of the most groundbreaking nonfiction middle grade books, the Newbery Honor-winning National Book Award finalist and bestseller, Bomb by Steve Shankin. Steve, who the Washington Post called the master of fast-paced histories, is already known for thrilling, page-turning nonfiction stories that are so exciting they read like fiction. So when you bring that skill to life with illustrations by beloved comics veteran Nick Bertozzi, you get an absolutely riveting read about the race among the United States, Germany, and the Soviet Union to build the world's most dangerous weapon, the atomic bomb. 3-time National Book Award finalist Steve Shankin has a massive following, and he's always asking his audience what they'd love to see next from him at nearly every single event for his Siebert Honor book and follow-up to Bomb, Fallout. Someone has asked for a graphic adaptation of Bomb. I'm also excited to report that this won't be Steve's last foray into graphic novels. He has an original nonfiction story called Divided, which follows the events leading up to the Civil War, slated for fall 2024. Illustrator Nick Bertozzi is the creator of 2 nonfiction books with First Second, Shackleton, a New York Times bestseller, and Lewis and Clark, and he is hugely respected in the comics community. We know this will be a favorite among fans of historical graphic novels like March and They Call Us the Enemy, and we're excited for you all to experience this classic in a whole new way. And next, we have another special guest, this time Zach Weinersmith, author of BEA WOLF, a modern middle grade graphic novel retelling of Beowulf. As a former English teacher, I wish I had this book to supplement teaching Beowulf. So we've invited Zach to tell you a little bit more about this can't miss retelling.
Oh, hello, librarians. I was just enjoying this book with library markings in front of my shelf of properly faced literature, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. I only have 90 seconds, so here's why you should put Beowulf on your shelves. First of all, it's an adaptation of the oldest epic poem in the English language. It uses a vaguely Old English styles type of verse, and if we could just get kids to read verse and actually enjoy it, we can get them reading Emily Dickinson and Langston Hughes, okay? It's what we got to do. Second, it's designed to be read aloud. It's pounding alliterative verse. People, adults who read it to kids, they start shouting. They can't help it. It's designed to be that way. It's also got jokes that will appeal to kids and adults, but not because they're sneaky adults jokes because they're jokes adults and kids will appreciate on the same level. Third, the artist is French. That means if the kids read it, they're technically reading French literature. Also, because he's the best artist in France, Boulet is, that makes him the best artist on earth. Every page is like a poster. Kids who don't understand exactly what's happening will be able to get it through the pictures. Fourth, it's educational. There's a whole back matter about the Beowulf manuscript, what's in it, and how we have it. And last, it will make more kids be weird like us. I am a bachelor of the arts. I tell etymology stories in bars. That's inappropriate, but it won't be if we can make more people like us. Please put Beowulf on your shelf. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zach. I am really excited. All right, next we have A First Time for Everything by Dan Santat. Dan Santat is a beloved name in children's books, and we feel beyond lucky to publish his graphic novel memoir, A First Time for Everything, because Dan's really not afraid to show how awful middle school was or how awkward he was, which he was. Dan got laughed at a lot, especially in front of girls he liked. By the time he graduated 8th grade, he dreaded everything, even this awesome trip to Europe that his parents sent him on. But that trip propelled him to a series of firsts that changed his life. Everything from his first kiss and first love to the first time a really drunk German guy threw up on him. Or the first time he snuck into Wimbledon during a semifinal match, a move that a good kid like Dan would have never made back home in his small town in California. Middle grade memoirs continue to be a big driver in the market, and here we've got a story by an author with a major trade and educator platform. Thrilled to have this one by Dan.
Hello, I'm Grace, and we need to talk about vaginas. Perfect for kids who want to know more about their bodies but don't know who to talk to, or parents who don't know how to explain sensitive issues to their kids. Kids will learn the correct anatomical names for everything down there, understand the menstrual cycle, and get to grips with the changes puberty brings. The suggested age range is 10 to 12, but as an adult, I found this book to be informative and wish I had this growing up. There's so much that's unknown about the female body. This book is a way for people to find out more about the vagina. Dr. Allison Rogers is a gynecologist with a very popular TikTok account for kids and teenagers explaining how things work in a fun and informative style. Her account has more than 850,000 followers, and her videos have been liked more than 28 million times. Annika Lee large, fun illustrations make this an approachable and friendly book, a world away from dry textbooks on the subject. This book would be a great addition to your library because it discusses sensitive topics from sex and consent to the pitfalls of social media. If you're confused, this book has you covered. Diane Zayler's Wild Bird is based on a true story and follows Ripe, an 11-year-old girl orphaned by the Black Plague in 1348. When Ripe is found by Owen, inside of the hollow of a tree, he doesn't know quite what to do with this young girl who stands awkwardly on one leg, like one of the wild birds he sees near port. He tells his ship captain father, who decides to take this scared foreign girl with them out to sea. However, the plague knows no land nor water boundaries, and soon the entire crew is sick or dying from the horrible disease, and Ripe and Owen must venture out on their own across medieval Europe as they walk from shores of Denmark to find Owen's mother in London. Along the way, they discover the power of found family and what it takes to survive one of the most harrowing times in modern human history. Following the footsteps of beloved award-winning books by authors like Karen Cushman and Donna Jo Napoli, this medieval survival story sticks with you with vivid depictions of humanity at its best and worst. A young female protagonist ready to face challenges head-on. The eloquent, memorable storytelling, Wild Bird has all the elements to be adored by fans of Kate DiCamillo and Karen Cushman.
It has been a huge few years for Adriana Cuevas. She was named a Spirit of Texas author. Her debut, The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez, was a Purabelle Prey honor book, and her sophomore novel, Cuba in My Pocket, received 3-star reviews and was named a Kirkus Best Book of the Year. So I'm incredibly excited to talk about Adriana's new book at MCPG, The Ghost of Rancho Espanto. It's about 12-year-old Rafael Alvarez, who is sent to work on a New Mexico ranch as a punishment for a school prank that goes wrong. Despite missing his friends and family, Rafa is strangely grateful to be away from home. His mother was just diagnosed with cancer, and it's led to a very, somber mood around his house. But soon the ranch life becomes strange too, because they're plagued by a bunch of strange phenomenon, like horses who change appearance overnight and archaeological sites being vandalized. And all evidence points to Rafa, and he's convinced that he's being framed by a strange man in a green sweater who appears right before all of these incidents. He and his friends think he is the ghost of a former horse thief who died on the ranch, but as they dig deeper into the mystery, Rafa uncovers more secrets about his family than he ever could have expected. Rancho Espanto plays to all of Adriana's strengths: an adventurous middle grade sensibility, heartfelt and emotionally complex characters, close-knit families, easygoing humor, and excellent Cuban-American representation. And with its elements of magical realism, the vivid Southwestern US setting, and lovable characters, this encapsulates exactly what made Nestor Lopez and Cuba in My Pocket such a favorite among librarians, booksellers, and readers. And next, The Deadlands, reader beware. In the start of this new series, The Deadlands, readers will find deadly beasts out for blood, sentient dinosaurs thrust into a Game of Thrones-like power struggle. If you've been looking for a book to hand to fans of Redwall, Warriors, and Wings of Fire, look no further. 50 years ago, the fallen star rained ash and toxic rain on Cretaceous, and the few surviving dinosaurs were changed. Their minds grew alert. They learned to speak and to wage war. As the 2 remaining dinosaur kingdoms battle for land, Illyri, the son of a prince, is exiled from his mountain kingdom to the Deadlands. In this scorched desert full of deadly obstacles and more deadly carnivores, he will have to join together with a group of unlikely allies, including the enemy soldier he saved, to avoid becoming prey. My favorite part of this series is the outstanding cast of characters. They are misfits and outcasts who become unexpected heroes in a war for their herd's very survival. And despite being a book about dinosaurs, this book feels very timely yet timeless, with propulsive action, a hearty dose of heart and humor, and a world steeped in magic and history. Each book in the series will be released 6 months apart to keep readers hooked, so be on the lookout for book number 2 very soon.
This next middle grade novel has a beautiful cover that will draw readers in. From APALA Honor Award-winning Susan Tan, I present Ghost, Toast, and Other Hazards, a middle grade novel about a girl who must overcome her worries to find the truth behind her town's urban legend. 12-year-old Mo is afraid of a lot of things, like toast. Since toasters can catch fire and burn down a house, things can go wrong, like how her stepdad just left the family and how her mom lost her job and now won't get out of bed. Or how they had to move in with her weird great uncle to a new town. Strangely, the only thing that Mo isn't afraid of are ghosts, because they're not real. But when she learns about the local legend of an elephant ghost that haunts the town, Mo finds herself wanting to uncover its mystery and live a little dangerously after all. This is a perfect social emotional learning book that talks about dealing with anxiety in a new, frightening, realistic situations that kids can relate to. This is amazing for fans of Front Desk and Maybe a Mermaid, a story with all the trappings of a classic, but unique and fresh in its own right.
And we have so many continuing series next winter. It's hard to even fit them all into the presentation. We have 2 new Hispanic star books in English and Spanish, this time introducing queer icon Sylvia Rivera and pop star Selena Gomez. We have a new young zoologist book from Neon Squid on koalas and honeybees, plus a new day in the life book about birds. We have new comics in the History Comics, Blueberry and Pancakes, and Science Comics series. Plus, for all the investigators fans out there and for fans of early reader graphic novels filled with mystery and fun, we have a new spin-off series coming in February, Agents of Suit. We have the conclusion to the Daniel Kraus Teddy saga, which already received a starred review from Kirkus, new books from Sam Hay and M.G. Leonard, the sequel to Pilar Ramirez and the Escape from Zafá by Julian Randall, which explores Dominican history through an action-packed fantasy story. We have a new Jasmine Taguchi book by Debbie Machiko Florence. This is book 5 in the series. A new Stella Diaz book by Angela Dominguez, and a new Doggo and Pupper early reader graphic novel by the one and only Catherine Applegate. Finally, check out our title list. I just dropped the link into the chat again. You can find even more books available to request on NetGalley. And you can find links to the digital review copies in that grid as well. And finally, I am excited to share some of our must-read picture books. Be sure to stay tuned until the end of our event to hear from our final guest speaker, Amerie. Starting with We Are Allies. Author and illustrator Tamani Emerald is a single mother, an author, illustrator, and activist focused on using art to spread a message of hope. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and empowerment are at the heart of every art piece that she creates. To quote Tamani, the way we speak to ourselves and to others matter. Our dinner table conversations and car rides and bedtime stories matter. If we care about the humanity of all people, we need to take action to create a world that is truly equitable, diverse, empowered, and inclusive. Tamani wrote this book for her 2 sons to explain the injustice in the world and how they could make a difference, knowing that the world would need her sons to be good allies. Tamani's art is colorful, accessible, and a friendly way to equate young readers with the concept of allyship. This book focuses on actionable ways that children can stand up for what's right. This could mean joining a cause, donating your money, your time, or your resources to others. Most of all, though, being a good ally means being willing to listen and to learn, to speak up when we see others being treated unfairly, to apologize when we make mistakes, to ask big questions and not be scared to talk about hard things. Tamani also includes an author's note at the back of the book with even more information to aid conversations with kids about what it means to be an ally and how to turn that into something actionable every day. Next, there are many ways to celebrate loved ones who have passed. In this moving picture book, A Gift of Feathers, a grandmother's collection of feathers inspires her granddaughters to honor and remember her. When Tallulah and Raya visit their grandma Dot, they're fascinated by her collection of feathers in a vase. She explains that she picks up feathers whenever she sees them because they remind her of people she has loved. She even lets her girls play with the feathers and reorganize them. But one day, sadly, Grandma Dot passes. Tallulah imagines herself talking to Grandma Dot one more time and getting one last hug. And as time goes on and the girls settle into life without their grandmother, they treasure her collection of feathers and the memories that she shared with them. And they find their own, which of course makes them think of her. The Jewish family in this story is inspired by author Ken Shep's own family, and his author's note includes a description of Shiva, or the Jewish tradition of mourning, and the traditional annual candle lighting, or Yarzet, featured in the final spread of the book, which is on the next slide. The story is beautifully illustrated by Romina Gawada, who you may recognize as the illustrator of Dear Librarian by Lydia Sigworth. This beautiful story honors the memory of those that have passed on and encourages us to celebrate their life every day. Next, have you ever felt too silly to be the first one to ask a question? Have you ever stopped yourself from asking a question because it felt too silly? For Stevie, speaking up in class can be a little scary. So when their teacher asks, does anyone have any questions? Stevie looks around the room hoping someone will raise their hand, but no one does. Stevie doesn't want to be the only one there with a question. He imagines what could happen if he does ask it. What if his classmates make fun of him? What if he's so embarrassed he has to leave town and move to outer space where no one will hear him and he can ask as many questions as he wants? The reader is swept into Stevie's anxious imagination as he blasts off into space. And suddenly it's not the question that feels silly, it just feels silly not to ask it. And when Steve finally summons the courage to ask his questions, he discovers that his classmates actually have so many questions of their own, and his courage inspired everyone in the class to ask theirs. I love these 2 spreads in particular, Stevie's imagination of what could happen versus what actually happened. His classmates had so many questions about bugs. This would make for an excellent classroom read aloud that shows young readers they're not alone in having questions and they shouldn't be afraid to speak up. Next, from Caldecott Medal winner Matt Cordell comes a timeless picture book that is destined to become an evergreen classic. This is a story divided into 6 short parts that chronicles the epic journey of a brave squirrel named Evergreen. Evergreen's mother wants to take a special soup to Granny, who is sick. Of course, Evergreen wants to help, but she's never taken a trip through the forest alone. And Evergreen is afraid of so many things: loud noises, meeting someone new, heights, swimming, thunderstorms, among other things. But Evergreen knows she must help her Granny, so she sets out on an epic adventure where she'll meet other animals who want to help, animals who need her help, animals who might put her in danger, and even some animals who want to steal her soup. The story has so many twists and turns along the way to keep readers guessing, and the final twist is truly a funny one that I did not see coming. At the beginning of the story, Evergreen is constantly telling herself, I can't do that. But by the end of the story, Evergreen realizes there is so much that she can do. She is so capable, and that empowering message is the heart of this epic animal adventure. Matt Cordell also pays homage to the artwork of William Steig and Arnold Lobel in Evergreen's art style. Most of the book is told through the frog and toad-esque spot art style that you saw on that first slide, but it is interspersed with these gorgeous full-page spreads at pivotal moments in the story that really pull the reader into the action, and that's something that Matt Cordell just does so well. Next, Idan Ben-Barak manages to do the impossible in his new book, We Go Way Back. He somehow squeezes billions of years of Earth's history into just a 40-page picture book that will educate readers of all ages. Just as he did with his previous books, Do Not Lick This Book, which was about germs, and There's a Skeleton Inside of You, which is about human anatomy, Idan breaks down a complex scientific topic into bright, accessible, kid-friendly art alongside his co-creator, Phil Bunting. And this time, Idan and Philip are tackling the biggest question yet. What is life? They start with what we can observe. A tree has a life, a starfish has a life, a dead fly had a life, and an egg might have it. But really, what is it and where did it come from? You got life from your parents, who got it from their parents, and so on, all the way back through Earth's history. From there, the book takes us back to the beginning when the first molecules on Earth began to form from Earth's elements, which formed together into tiny bubbles. And after billions of years, those tiny bubbles were able to make copies of themselves, to make more bubbles. And after billions of years, those bubbles became the many creatures wriggling around on Earth. And the story culminates in a giant double gatefold illustration, which you can see on the next slide, that folds out from the book, filled with animals and plants, great and small, that really does justice to the magnitude of life on Earth and the magnitude of this giant topic, illustrating how those first little molecules and bubbles became the creatures and plants that populate our world. With Idan's trademark humor and gorgeous illustrations worth poring over, We Go Way Back will inspire students and budding biologists to dig deeper into this fascinating topic. Next, debut author illustrator Denali Devbarbara's Quiet Time with Nicaea was inspired by her own Sinhalese Sri Lankan family and shows how universal the language of love can be and crossing language and cultural barriers. Each and every page of this book is full of lightness and love as a girl shares how she spends her days with her grandfather, her Sia. While the child and her Sia don't speak the same language, they have no problem understanding each other and having fun. They share story times, video games, afternoon snacks, and bike rides to the beach, and every day, no matter how loud or quiet, is magical. Although this is Denali's debut picture book, her storytelling and art are so accomplished and masterful. This beautiful intergenerational story is a tribute to immigrant families and awesome grandparents, perfect for fans of I Dream of Popo and Drawn Together. Next, eco-anxiety is a very real worrying trend for kids these days. A recent BBC study found that 99% of 8 to 16-year-olds were worried or very worried about climate change, and 20% said they'd even had a nightmare about it. Harold completely understands that feeling. Harold is an iceberg lettuce, but when he sees a documentary about how climate change is melting icebergs, he gets a little confused and starts to worry that maybe he's melting too, just like his frozen cousins. And as his anxiety grows and grows, Harold searches for any way to stop the melting and trying everything from clever disguises to hiding in the very back of the fridge. But with a little help from his friends, Harold will learn how to cool down in a different, more healthy way and maybe still help the environment in the process. The book will not only entertain young readers, but also validate their worries while simultaneously offering them anti-anxiety grounding techniques and tips for combating climate change that they can use in their own lives. Next, Aaliyah L. Augustani's book, Big Tune, celebrates a vibrant Jamaican American community. A young boy named Shane loves his neighborhood's Big Tune dance party, packed houses with friends and relatives, dancing, sharing a meal, and just good vibes all around. His daddy is a dance hall king, and Shane secretly loves to dance, even if his brothers make fun of him. And he's saving up money to buy some new kicks and show off his moves. But when his family's Saturday dance party gets canceled because a speaker is blown, Shane instead uses his speaker money to save Big Tune. When word gets out that Shane saved the day, the whole community comes together to pool their money for Shane, whose shyness melts away as he takes the floor and the whole party gets down. The rhyming and rhythmic text of the story brings to life this musical celebration and makes for a great read aloud. The illustrator Shamar Knight Justice is an elementary school principal in Atlanta, and his art brings this neighborhood to life. Big Tune celebrates Black boy joy, the power of community, togetherness, and helping one another in times of need. Next, dupattas are a traditional shawl worn in communities all around South Asia. But as this picture book shows, there's so much more than beautiful garments. They also carry the colors, sounds, and sense of family culture and identity. Author Marzia Abez drew inspiration from her own lived experience of wearing and playing with dupattas while growing up in Pakistan and Dubai. Illustrator Anu Shunan's vibrant artwork perfectly depicts the bold colors and intricate patterns often found on dupattas. The book is all about celebrating a piece of South Asian heritage for kids who don't often get to see themselves and their family in the spotlight. Perfect for readers of Bedtime Bonnet and the Proudest Blue. Next, everything feels special when Auntie Fatma comes to stay from her home in Cairo, Egypt. As Auntie Fatma sings her bedtime lullaby, the reader is transported to modern Cairo, experiencing the sights and sounds of the city in this beautiful picture book from Zeena Pliska and illustrator Hatem Ali. Here to tell you a little bit more about the book is author Zeena Pliska herself.
Hi, I am Zeena. Welcome. I'm a kindergarten teacher by day and a children's book author by night. And I am so excited to share my latest picture book with you, Egyptian Lullaby. Egyptian Lullaby is a love letter from me to Cairo. And it's about a young girl who really misses her homeland. It's a bit of a unique immigration story in that it's not about coming to a new place and learning to be a part of that new place or learning to try to belong. It's about longing for the place that you left. And her aunt comes from Cairo and she brings with her a song that helps her remember all the sights and sounds of this city that she misses so much. The best part of this book, the best part of this children's book are the illustrations by Hatem Ali. He really gives you a visceral experience. He puts you right there in the middle of Cairo where the energy of the city, the rhythm of the city is all there on the page. It's really incredible. So thank you for coming and I hope that you enjoy Egyptian Lullaby.
Thank you so much, Zeena. We have so many more picture books coming this winter. I wish we had time to talk about them all. You can find links to preview all of these books on the popular and continuing series and more must-read picture book slides. We have to move through them very quickly, but you can go and check out the preview links in that title grid that we dropped in the chat. But finally, without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce our final special guests of today, Connie Hsu and Amerie, to talk about Amerie's beautiful picture book, You Will Do Great Things, available on March 28th, 2023. Connie Hsu is the editorial director at Roaring Brook, an imprint of Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Books she's edited include Caldecott Medal winner, The Adventures of Beagle, Caldecott Honor Book, Leave Me Alone, and Cybert Medal winner, Fry Bread, and the bestsellers After the Fall, Be Kind, and the Friends graphic novel. Connie was born in Taiwan, grew up in Alabama, and currently lives in Brooklyn, New York. Amerie is a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter, producer, and writer. The daughter of a Korean artist and an African-American military officer, Amerie was born in Massachusetts, raised all over the world, and graduated from Georgetown University with a bachelor's in English. She is the editor of the New York Times bestseller, Because You Love to Hate Me, a Junior Library Guild selection, and recently founded Amerie's Book Club, a book club that highlights diverse and unique perspectives and voices. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and son. Welcome, Amerie and Connie.
Hi, everyone. And hey, Amerie, do you want to start your video? Hi.
Hi, everyone. Did I do that correctly? Okay.
You are here and we can hear you. And yeah, Amerie actually recently moved. So you're coming in, calling in from where?
No, I'm actually in Los Angeles, though.
Oh, you are in Los Angeles. Okay.
Funny story. I'm here. Normally I have my bookshelves behind me and I would have my copy of You Will Do Great Things, but I came to visit my sister. I came to town for a wedding and I came to visit my sister to spend some sister time, which means this is going great. There's all of her stuff that's like racked. I'm like, oh, so you're putting me into your makeshift closet. Great. I was like, I'll figure it out. And then I left the book home because my husband's been reading it to River. And so I was like, I could take it and show it and it'll be beautiful, or we could really use it. And so I chose to.
Sure. Well, thank you for, on the road, you're everywhere. Thank you so much. I know that you recently moved to Atlanta and you're calling in while in your sister's closet. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Other than this, it's closet vibes.
Yeah. Well, let's get started. I know this is a story of your heart. I know
Yeah.
that this is something you wanted to do for a really long time. So can you share a little bit about what inspired you to write You Will Do Great Things?
Well, I always wanted to write a picture book. I love picture books growing up. By the way, there are phenomenal picture books that have been listed. I've been just like typing like titles to just like gather them all. So I love picture books. They meant so much to me growing up. But I always had this memory of one I haven't found, and it was a picture book that was beautiful, but the girl looked like me, and it was so rare, especially, you know, in the 80s. So it was like, wow, this is amazing. And when I had my son, I wanted to, you know, you're reading so many books, but there were so many things that I wanted to say to him, so many things that I wanted to pass to him. And You Will Do Great Things is just about all of the beautiful, wonderful things that we hope for our children, for our kids, for the kids in our lives. Knowing that they have everything ahead of them and wanting them to know that we are there with them every step of the way, that they're going to have a ride that's up and down, but they have so much support from those who are living like ourselves, but also all of the power from our ancestors, everyone that came before us, what they've built to just provide a wonderful path. And I wanted my son to know that you will do great things. Whatever's happening in the world, whatever obstacles you may face, all the joys you have, you're here to do something great. And whatever it is, I want to be here to help you be the best that you can be and to help you find that. And then, of course, I wanted him to be able to look at someone who looked like himself, similar skin tone, without it being, that's not what the book is about, but just being able to see those things. And even if a child does not look, you know, does not have, you know, brown skin, I think it's so important for all kids to have books on their shelves that reflect the diversity that's around them. Because I think, honestly, that's the best way to drive home that we are in a diverse world and that we are all equal and that we should all love each other. It's just for them to just see that all around them.
Yeah, and then the art also incorporates, you know, you were talking about heritage and our ancestors. It really is a love letter to those who came before us and imbued us with the qualities and courage and strength to overcome those obstacles. And I know that community and heritage plays such a large role, both in your story and in the art. So can you tell us a little bit about how your personal heritage is reflected in the visual narrative of the book?
Of course. So, you know, the artwork is so beautiful, and we have you to thank for that because you have such a great eye. But I love the idea of depicting, you know, we all have, there's so much diversity in our lives, but I think there's so many people who have a lot of diversity in their own families, and it may not even be a quote unquote thing, but it was so cool to me to see someone who has both an Asian and a Black background. And again, that's not the point of the story, but it's just, you just see it as everyone's moving through their lives. And so we do have someone inspired by my mom and, you know, my husband's side of the family and, you know, my father. And so you end up having a lot of like Korean people on the page too, that are just there from both past and present. But this is his family. This is the main character's family. Even though if one would look at him and say, oh, this is a Black child, there's like so much more diversity in so many of our backgrounds. And I love the way that was reflected in the Phoenix as well.
Yeah, it really encourages people to not just look at the outside, just to understand that people are made up of all kinds of things. Just reach out, ask, learn, right? And really connect. I love that you brought up Raissa Figueroa's beautiful art. At the time, I was working with Raissa on We Wait for the Sun. And so I put her forth and you just immediately responded. I think your email was like, wow. And so can you share a bit about what had you connecting with Raissa's art so immediately and positively?
Raissa's artwork, you know, what struck me immediately was it's so vivid. Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. Okay. So vivid, very, very rich. And it was really important to me that this book in particular was something that could be a great book for new parents to pick up, people who have children in their lives, a great baby shower type book. And I say this not because it's about that, no, that's not the topic, but I wanted a forever book. I wanted something that would sit on the shelves, make a beautiful gift, something that could be treasured. And for that, there had to be like a perfect balance of beautiful, rich artwork that was like contemporary, but also had a lot of what I viewed as staying power. So when I saw her artwork, I was thinking, this is it. Look how gorgeous it is, how rich. There's so much depth, and it really pops. And, you know, as someone who's purchases and continues to purchase many picture books with no regrets, we are going to build that library. I could see that those illustrations and her artwork, her touch, would bring so much to the story.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about your text, which is very exciting for a great artist, is it was very open-ended. And so when we shared this with Raissa, I remember you saying, let's be creative. Like, let's not put in a ton of art notes. Let the artist do her thing. And when she came back with this fantastical journey, what was your first response? And then share a little bit about what the collaboration process was like, because you know, this really has this combination of your vision with Raissa's.
I gasped. That was my first reaction. This page in particular, with the phoenix flying, with the depth, I mean, that's just so gorgeous. I literally gasped. I was like, oh. And I was like, this is so perfect. And you know, when you're writing a story, you don't really know the other half of how everything's going to be depicted, but it's just, she really, really nailed it. And she brought so much context and perspective. And I think, you know, because when you're reading a picture book, you want it for your kids, but especially when they're really young, you know, as a parent, it's for you too. As you know, there's so much, that's such a special time. Kids won't want to sit on your lap forever, apparently. So you know, that wonderful time is something to be cherished. And I really wanted something to be able to be there to provide that.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of being a parent and, you know, reading with your child on your lap, you mentioned that you recently got a very early finished copy. So what was it like to hold that in your hands and to be able to finally share this with your family?
I nearly cried, like my eyes welled up. And it's just, there's just something, books are my special place. Books are my happy place. I don't think I even cried when I was nominated for Grammy. I was like, yeah, but like getting this, I was like, oh my goodness, like, let me just calm down. I was like getting teary, and it was just so surreal, but it was just gorgeous. And I knew how much work we all put into the work. I knew how, to me as a parent, how I would have loved to have this like right when he was born, but we have it now, and that's awesome. So I felt like this was something very special. And again, lots of work. We're gonna have to talk to you, Connie, about how much work you put into this, because you are phenomenal. And by the way, like, you guys, I was very happy to work with Connie. Like, I literally showed my son and my husband her picture in the back of Dan Santat's book. And I was like, this is Connie, we're working together. She's going to be helping mom with the picture book. And so for me, it's a big deal to work with Connie and with someone of her talent and her eye.
Oh, thank you. The honor is producing beautiful books, and your words, from just like a simple column of words, were so evocative. And I started to think, well, of course, this is a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter behind this. And so, you know, were you thinking of any songs while you were writing it? Would you recommend a song to pair with this for an amazing story time? What music is in your ears?
If there was any music I would pair, it would if at all, maybe like a nice, calm, soothing instrumental. There's lots of Spotify playlists like that, because I think it kind of provides a nice, beautiful background, a little bit of heart, because, you know, Raissa has those little golden orbs happening, or the multicolored orbs happening in the story. So something just very soothing, because I think the message is very strong. It's almost like telling the child that there are going to be ups and downs. You can do it, but also like, I know you've got it in you. There's a little bit of, there's a tough edge, a tough love edge in there, where I know you have it in you to achieve great things. And I know you'll be there, and I'm going to just cheer you on. And so having something that allows the words to be there, and a gentle thing in the background, is good. And it was a really cool process too, you know, working on the story. So
yeah, how's that different from, I know they're very different books, your YA anthology that you edited to great success, and also this book. It's a big pivot. So what was different this time around? Can you share a little bit about your process?
sure. The biggest difference is that I don't, like when I'm sitting down to write a short story or some piece of fiction, I'm in there and we're going to figure it out. With a picture book, especially when you have that rhyming, that more poetic flow, it's there. I approach it actually very similar as I do to writing a song. And so I'm just sitting, I'm letting the words come. If it's there, it's there. And if it's not there for the moment, that's okay. It's just not there. And so I will get up, I will go do other things. I may come back a few days later. And then when I come back, all of it will just fall into place, or, oh no, it's just not really there yet. So it was a lot of like just checking in on the story and then writing it in that way, and like a song. And in a weird way, I can't write it down with pencil. I can only just think about it and then kind of have it and then like transcribe it into the computer. And I think that's because I can't write songs when I'm songwriting. I can't write it down.
Oh, it's all
Like
all in
Jay-Z.
here.
I can't write it down because it like locks things in a weird way for me. So it's like I just have to let it flow in my head and then put it on the computer with all these blank spaces. And it's very interesting for me because I was like, well, this is really different.
Yeah. That's so interesting because when we were doing edits, I remember you would say, I see it. I'm gonna sit with it. I'm gonna process it. And now the way you're describing the way you usually approach songwriting and text writing, it makes sense that you had to like take it off the computer and put it into your brain and let it sit there and then like release it back onto the page. So well, you talked a little bit about, your songwriting process, and sometimes you can't think of the right things, and that's okay. And that really follows the arc of your book as well. And so one of the things that I really, there are a lot of books about like inspiring your child and, thinking about all the great things they can do. But what I liked about what you did with You Will Do Great Things is it acknowledges challenges, it acknowledges obstacles. And so is that part of what you wanted families and children to take away? And is there anything else that you hope they carried with them after reading your book?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing about it is, life is going to throw a lot of obstacles at you. I tend to look at obstacles as opportunities. That's how I just look at it. So, I mean, literally, it's just whatever's happening. It's like, okay, like, what am I supposed to learn from this? Or cool, this is like, I've been on stage where it's been like, da 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 da, cue, and the music is off. And there's like 10,000 people that are like, and I'm like, I could throw it out and say, you do it. Or it's just like, you just roll with it. And those kind of things happen in life. Things are going to happen. It's just how you get past it, and you'll always learn from it. And so that was really important to me to show, for the picture book, to show kids, because kids face so much, it's pretty stressful being a child. Everything's new. You can't really do anything that you want all the time. You feel kind of like you're not in control of everything. So it's hard to go out into that world and have to make even just like decisions such as like your friend doesn't want to play with you right now, or something like that. That can be a huge blow.
Yeah.
Or you're not able to do this right now, or everyone's managing to throw this over there, but somehow you're failing. But it was important to me to show kids that that's okay. It's part of it. And it will help you, but you are also not alone. And that any questions you have about the world, you will find it inside. Like if you're just really quiet, you'll get it. You have everything that you need. You're so equipped for this life.
Well, that's beautiful. And we could obviously talk all day, and it looks like we're out of time. But Amerie, just really quickly, if you could share where people can find more about you and your amazing book club online. And then everyone check out Amerie all over the place. Book clubs, online, everywhere.
Thank you. You guys can check me out at amerie.co, it's co, not .com. So amerie.co, also ameriesbookclub.com. And I'm on Instagram under Amerie, and then Amerie's Book Club is also on Instagram. And from there, you can find me elsewhere. And I'm so happy to be here. I was very, very nervous, like really, really, really nervous.
You couldn't tell at all, Amerie and Connie. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
this
so much for
fantastic
coming.
conversation.
Thank you all for having us.
We
Thank
really
you for having
appreciate you
us.
being here. And we just wanted to say thank you to all the librarians and educators and authors who were here and in our chat and just watching. We are going to kick it off to Booklist to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kristen, Elise, and Grace, our editors, Connie and Brian, and our very special guests, Amerie, Zeena, Zach, Katherine, Deb, Nick. What an excellent preview. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title lists, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Next. Now you can share Booklist love with everyone connected to your school district, library system, or higher learning institution. Booklist Online Unlimited offers just that, unlimited simultaneous access to 30 years worth of review and article archives, plus digital editions of all of Booklist publications. For more pricing and other questions, visit booklistonline.com/subscribe. Next. Have you heard? Booklist Reader, our new magazine that offers reading recommendations to patrons of all ages and interests, is coming to print this January. We are so excited. Please go to bit.ly/booklistreader print to find out how you can order print copies in bulk for your library. Already have a Booklist subscription? You can share the latest issue now. Go to our website for more details. Next. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our panelists, the MacKids School and Library team, and of course to our sponsor, Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.